So for the last couple of months, I have been building this tool called Clinic. Clinic is simple, straightforward appointments, tasks, and messages for doctors. A lot of the work that I've been doing here has been around the particular visual design of these features. This appointment detail screen, a task screen, these list views, the patient screen, which still needs a lot of work. All of these different features are important to represent in this prototype. This is a code prototype in the browser that when I work with prospective users or customers to look at this and vet the features, this is a much more realistic experience for them to look at and understand than something that might be made in Figma. But there is a piece here that I haven't spent a ton of time talking about, and that is kind of the interactivity of the prototype itself. How does one actually do things with this tool? Over the last couple of weeks, I've been working on fleshing out some of those interactivity pieces. But before I get into showing you how that stuff has come along, I want to show you a little bit of my process for figuring out what I need to build and how I need to build it into this prototype. Let's jump over to FigJam. Now in FigJam, I have this kind of map. This is an object diagram, and this is something that's still in progress, but you can see that I've got this kind of matrix of objects, and these objects are all of the primitives inside the tool. Now this list is intentionally very short. This is because I want to ensure that this tool is hyper-focused on providing the most value in these areas to prospective customers and clinicians. Now, within this list, I have this kind of relationship diagram. So you can see that across these things, there are essentially relationships between these objects. So appointments are related to patients, appointments are related to messages, etc., etc. And this is an important thing to think about because it not only helps me think about how to design the system and the templates and the ways in which I'm going to represent information, but it's also really helpful in helping me understand how I need to design a database to support the information within this system. But what I want to focus on today is this grid here at the top, these green squares. These green squares are the actions inside this system. Now, they're not comprehensive, it's not every single action, but it is enough actions to kind of get a feel for what we need to talk about today. Under these green squares, you can see I've got essentially a row of CRUD. In that base, if you're not familiar with what CRUD means, it's create, update, and delete. Essentially, it's the kind of basic make a thing, update or edit the thing, or delete the thing. What is interesting is, should you be able to update these things from other primitives? That's a question that we need to answer. But you can see that above these, this row of CRUD, I have more actions here that are things like send a message on from a patient, right? So like if you're looking at a patient, you should be able to send that patient a message, right? This is a pretty critical piece of the kind of structure and diagram of this tool, because this is something that I actually hear about a lot from clinicians about current EHRs on the market. The thing that they'd say is that a lot of these actions can be siloed and kind of inaccessible. They often say things like it's harder to use or there's more friction, and a lot of that friction comes about because these actions and things that are related to different parts of the tool are not always available where they might logically need to be available. So if I'm looking at an appointment, or if I'm looking at a message, or if I'm looking at a task, there are certain actions that make sense to be able to do from those things that are not necessarily just creating the thing or deleting the thing. Patient is probably the best example here, simply because of the fact that when you look at a patient and you're looking at the patient's chart, it probably makes sense to be able to schedule an appointment from that view, or to send them a message, or to do something else. Same thing with a message. If I'm looking at a message from a patient, it probably makes sense to be able to schedule an appointment with that patient from that message, which this actually gets into something that's interesting in that this is kind of talking about the relationship of these other objects to the action. So this might only be available if that message has a related patient. If not, then that probably action doesn't need to be there, right? It wouldn't make any sense. And so one of the things that I'm using this diagram to do is to help me understand not just the actions that need to be able to be available everywhere, but how those actions then carry out through the rest of the system. Now, in the past, I'll show you a little bit of the archive here. The very first version of this tool had this kind of launchpad view, and I've since removed this view because of just a number of reasons, not important, but basically I got rid of it. But one of the things I liked about that was I had this kind of these three big action buttons here, and this was really nice. I thought it looked good. And it would help to kind of create some enforcement of here are the things that you can do no matter where you are. Now, in addition to this, I also had these buttons buried underneath this kind of bolt icon in the top navigation bar. And this was good because then it would be globally available everywhere. It's right next to the search button. So like there's this kind of relationship between searching things and making things that is interesting, particularly if you're just kind of anywhere in the product. You can do any of these things no matter where you are. Again, this is a kind of a differentiator for the product in general. But as I have evolved Clinic in the last couple months, I've kind of gotten rid of the launch pad. I've removed some other things and simplified the structure of the product. And so one of the things that I have been thinking about here is like, okay, where do these things go? And more importantly, how does someone access them? So one of the things I had a hunch about was that the bolt icon probably would not be the best icon to use. It's a little bit vague. It's not super specific. There's no label, so people probably would not be able to figure it out. And in fact, when I tested this with a user recently, I said, hey, you're on this screen here. You can make a new task from this screen. You're not in the context of tasks. So where would you go to do that? And again, the prototype had the bolt icon up here. It was a little drop down and they just couldn't figure it out. They didn't know where it was. And that was a big problem. So what I did was I moved this button over here and this new button here. And this is important because this button it has these primary CRUD actions inside of it. This is creating any one of these things. But these things also, these CRUD operations need to exist within the space for these things themselves. So you can see here, if you're on the appointment screen, you got a new appointment button. Same thing here in patient, you have a new appointment or a new message button. So there is some consistency here that would be good to incorporate, because the more that these actions are consistent, the less someone has to relearn these things throughout the product, the more intuitive and easy to use the product feels, because they don't have to relearn how to create an appointment every single time they need to do it. They don't have to worry about having to navigate from a patient to the appointments view to new appointment, then reselecting that patient, then doing all these things. All they have to do is know, I just have a new button, or I see the new appointment button, and boom, I can do the thing I need to do, and it's going to be the same experience. Now, I haven't hooked it all up in the prototype because that part, since I'm not a software engineer, that part has proven to be quite challenging. But let me show you a little bit about what I have done here. So when you hit the new button, you get this little kind of command palette menu type of pop-up in the middle of the screen. It's fairly unobtrusive. It just kind of floats over the screen. It does prevent you from doing anything else, as it probably should if you're interrupting your flow, but it doesn't take you out of the context of where you are. So you can be kind of anywhere in the product. You can be like, writing a note for this patient, and you can still get in to create a new thing. So when I come in here, I see new appointment, new patient, new task, etc. And then clicking one of these buttons brings up a new pop-up. Now there's still some kind of funkiness I need to work out here, but you can see that this is essentially a nested pop-up series. And so you can kind of get through these things no matter how you do it. You can use the escape key to move back and forth. You can use the enter key. You can dismiss it altogether with the escape key. Submitting a thing will dismiss, if you create an appointment here, that would dismiss the entire modal experience. And this is just the way I'm thinking about how to make this faster for users. Now, I haven't fully tested this with users, so this is definitely something to continue to work through, but this is one of the things that I think is useful here. This system is so simple that you can create pretty much anything you need to from one menu, right? You can do anything you need to do here, and it's fast. You don't have to do a ton of clicks. You don't have to navigate to a bunch of different places within the product. You can do it all from one click. And ideally, there's a shortcut key, etc., at some point. But what about updating things? So tasks is the one that I'm thinking about kind of the most here in terms of how to update something, how to update the name of a task, how to update the description. So let's say, we have this, refill lisinopril 20 milligrams. We could just click in here and delete things, right? And that gives us the system to be quick to update, and we have these subtle kind of hints about where to edit and how to edit. And again, as long as these things are consistent throughout the experience, this will be something that someone can pick up and relearn and understand. Same thing for the description, right? We might say need to to increase, I don't know, dosage to, 25 milligrams, right? And then if I needed to, I could come in here and bold it, right? So there's some of this level of extra realism that's important for this experience that I might not necessarily get when I'm doing this in Figma or any other prototyping tool, that when I can build it out here, the user can tell me, oh yeah, okay, I can see how this would be useful. Someone actually said, like, I don't really know what I would use the description field for in a task. And that was a really good eye-opener for me, because now it maybe means that we don't need a description field on a task. We actually had a really good conversation about the relationship between tasks and messages and what that looks like and what that should be. So this is what I'm working on with interactivity. I would love to hear your thoughts about other things that you would be interested in hearing about with interactivity and what kinds of things you would want to know how to do in a system like this. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon. Peace.